That's what it was looking like.
Yep. I'm not using that. Thank you very much for your help.
As long as this blue thing comes back saying published and ready to go. It won't say exactly that, but you know.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay.
SHEVA. It looks like Sheva or Shiva. You don't want to get into any Hinduism here in this Hebrew, biblical Hebrew. It's biblical Hebrew. It's pronounced Shva. And in English, actually, I think we say Shwa in linguistics and when it applies to English, but in Hebrew it's called the Shva. Shva. Okay? And he says they're pronounced S-H-V-A, Shva. See that? You hear that? Shva. Okay, that. Now, let's think about this for a second. The Masoretes were the Jewish scribes. They didn't invent the vowels, but they invented a system for noting the vowels. And we thank the Lord for the Masoretes because it makes things so much easier for us today to learn Hebrew and to learn the vowels. But if they're noting where they hear vowels, what vowels they hear, not every consonant is going to have a vowel with it. Okay? So they needed another device to indicate where they didn't hear a vowel. And this is the shva. That's its function. Okay? So it could have been used here, right? There's no vowel here on this chet, but because it's at the end of a word, it's not necessary to put a shva there. But within a word, if there was a place where there was no vowel heard, then the Masoretes used the shva to indicate that. And the shva is let's just do a bait. 2 dots like that, 2 vertical dots. That's the shva. What does it indicate?
No vowel.
No vowel sound. Now, hopefully everyone's read the chapter, so you will know that there is a sound involved with the shva. So we have to think about why is that? Why is there sound? So the first use, the first way it works out is that the shva is silent. That would make sense, realizing that it's there to mark the absence of a vowel. But there is a vocal situation of the shva, a vocal one. And I'll show you some examples here, but don't let this fool you. The shva isn't a vowel. Okay? In certain contexts where you have a consonant cluster, for example, it is necessary to give a small sound to kind of ease the pronunciation of it, okay? So just to help it out a little bit. And so the shva has a small, a quick sound to it. It's like as in, the way we normally say the definite article in English, the. Okay, the. Hear how that is kind of hurried, the. It's quick. Okay, that's the sound that this has when it's vocal. It's not a full vowel sound. It's a sound. So let's look at 2 examples. Okay, let's look up here first. Let's identify the schwa. Here it is. Now, let's divide this up into syllables, okay? So, let's sound it out first. What sound does this make? Mem makes a m sound. What vowel is this? Close, but it sounds kind of like that, but it's not quite right. Chirik. It sounds like shirik, but there's a big difference in the pronunciation. But chirik says what? E. Vowel, consonant? What's the name of it? Dalet makes a what sound? D. Schwa, okay, that's open to question here. It's actually silent in this case. Bait makes what? B. Comets makes what? Reich makes what sound? Okay? So here we have two syllables. Since this is closing this syllable, see that at the end? We have consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant. See that? Two closed syllables. So the syllable division is actually right here. This midbar means desert, wilderness. So here it is silent. Midbar. It doesn't, there's no vowel sound with that. Do you see that? That's the standard use, the silent schwa. Okay? No sound. Midbar. Now, here we have another word. It's the plural of words. Let's go through the sounds here. Dalet makes what? Okay. That's going to make the vocal schwa sound. So, Bait makes what? Counts makes not v. It looks like almost like a vav, doesn't it? But it's got this longer top. It's a reish, so it's a r. Chirik. Actually, chirik yod. E. Final mem. Okay. Now, notice that in this case, the schwa is beginning a syllable. It's beginning the word too, but it's beginning the syllable. So we could break this down into three syllables. Okay. Now, if this was, really, the schwa still is showing us there's not a regular vowel sound here. There's not a vowel sound at the beginning of the word. However, it would be hard to pronounce if you started a word with no vowel sound, wouldn't it? It would be dvar, right? It's a consonant cluster. These two, this dalet and the bait together. It's kind of hard. Now, if we add a little oil to it, to lubricate this a little bit with the schwa, devarim. Hear that? Devarim. See how it works now? So, at the beginning of a syllable, the schwa is vocal. It needs a little sound to get that syllable going. At the end of a syllable, it's silent. It makes no sound. So that's how I like to break it down. Straightforward. Futado is giving you another rule, which I'll mention in just a second, but this is how I like to think about it. Once we understand how syllables work and break down in words, if a schwa is at the beginning of a syllable, it's vocal. If it's at the end of a syllable, it's silent. That's pretty clear, isn't it? Now, that is assuming we can figure out how the syllables go, but I think that's a pretty clear way to think about it. Tyler?
In both of these words, we pronounce the that like a the. Wouldn't one be a the?
No, yeah, you're right. You're right about that. I thought I pronounced it correctly. Listen to this. It could be it's just hard to hear through this. Mid bar.
Okay.
Bar.
Okay.
Because what does it have there? It has the weak dagesh in the bait, indicating it's a b sound. In this case, devarim, devarim. It's a v sound here. So you're exactly right.
I thought you just misheard you on the first one. That makes sense.
Yeah, it could be, or maybe I didn't make the distinction clear enough. Yes?
How would the syllables, the two syllables with a schwa be different in each case? I guess that's the part I don't get. Because you mentioned when it's at the beginning of a syllable or
Well,
later. But
this can't be the end of a syllable. Is that what you mean? That's impossible because it's the beginning of a word. So it can't be the end of a syllable. So we're beginning. We're having to begin to pronounce this. There's no vowel before it. So to go to his way of explaining it, he says short and silent. Short and silent. But the schwa is a short and silent type, I guess. But it is, what it means is if there's a short vowel before it, it's silent. So in this case, is there a short vowel before it? Yes, the chirik. Is there a short vowel before it? No, there's no vowel before it. So you can use that. I think it works. You have to know the vowel length in order for it to work, which I hope you do. We'll learn those. But so keep that in mind. That's his rule. It's a very succinct statement of the rule. But the reason why that is the case, that short vowels precede the silent schwa, is basically what I'm showing you. That is that in this case it's closing a syllable, so it's silent, and then the next syllable will begin here with this consonant. But in this case, it's actually beginning the syllable and the word, and therefore it needs to have some kind of sound to get it going, so we can pronounce it and to provide some buffer between these consonants here. One other thing I want to show you is another example here. All right. Did I tell you what this means? Devarim means words. And that's actually what the 10 Commandments are called. They're not called commandments. In Exodus and Deuteronomy, they're called the 10 words God gave. Devarim. That's actually it's also the Hebrew name for Deuteronomy is Devarim. The words. The words that God gave through Moses. What Moses? Yeah.
That im is plural, right?
Im is plural. Yeah, good. I was talking about this in Old Testament the other day, but we haven't gotten there yet in Hebrew class. But this im ending is the plural, masculine plural ending. All right. So mizbeach means altar. Favorite Hebrew word around here, or it should be mizbeach. But this is the plural. It's of mizbeach. But look at what we have here in this word. There's a schwa and there's a schwa. Look at that. Two schwas together. Two schwas together. Now, we will just we'll apply what we just saw here, what we just learned. We'll apply this. Here we have consonant, vowel, consonant. That's a closed syllable right there. And then we have the beginning of another syllable here. So we could break this down into syllables like this. And we would pronounce this mizbachot. Repeat after me. Miz, ba, Chot. So we have a silent schwa followed by a vocal schwa, right? Two types of schwa together. But the rule is that whenever you have two schwas together in the middle of a word, the first one is always silent and the second one is always vocal. The first one always closes the preceding syllable and the second one always opens the following syllable. So this fits in with what I'm telling you, where if it's closing a syllable, it's silent. If it's beginning a syllable, it's vocal. Miz bachot. Alters. Any questions here? Any questions? So let's review. What is a syllable?
Group of sounds.
What kind of sounds? You're right about that. What kind of sounds?
Consonant, vowel sound.
A group of consonants and vowels together make a syllable. What are the two types of syllables in Hebrew? Closed and open. What is closed?
Consonant vowel.
Consonant vowel. Consonant. What is an open syllable? Consonant vowel. Okay. What is the basic function of the schwa?
Whether it's a cluster of consonants, it allows it to move forward, I guess, in pronunciation.
You're right about that. That I wouldn't call it its basic function, but you're right that it does do that. So going back to the Masoretes and what they needed to do, let's think back to that. What did they need to do with that the schwa helps them solve the problem?
Space filler where there's no vowel.
Okay, it's kind of a placeholder, maybe placeholder, but it's saying they don't hear a vowel sound here. Okay, so let's think about that as the basic function of this schwa, the two dots. But then it has two different ways, and from a pronunciation perspective, that we can think about it. Good, I took it off the board. So what is one of the? Okay, silent. Could be silent. Doesn't make any sound. Or what's the other one? Vocal. Okay. And what's Furtado's rule about how to tell the difference between silent and vocal schwas? Okay, short and silent. If it's preceded by a short vowel, it's silent. All right, but I like to say if it begins a syllable, it's vocal. If it ends a syllable, it's silent. All right? Any questions? Any questions?
Say it one more time, like, with those two example words, which one is it ending the syllable and which one is it beginning the syllable?
Right over here?
Yeah.
In this one, the schwa is ending a syllable because we divided our syllables here. So we have two, what kind of syllables?
It's a closed
Two, exactly, right. Two closed syllables. This one's closed, consonant, vowel, consonant. This one's closed, consonant, vowel, consonant. See that? All right, so in this case, this is the first vowel, so this begins this consonant, this syllable, this syllable. And then it's ending the syllable here. This is the consonant closes the syllable. Okay? So it's silent. Here we have three syllables. Open, open, closed. So in this case, schwa is a little bit odd, but we're treating it like a vowel, even though it's a vowel-less placeholder in terms of the syllables. So but here, because it's beginning, I can't begin with silence. And then it creates friction with this other consonant here. So this is how we break down the syllables. So it's beginning a syllable, and in this case, it's also beginning a word. I'm going to vocalize it with a short sound, de, varim.
So would another way to put it be, if it's on the beginning consonant of a syllable, it's vocal. If it's on the last consonant of a syllable, it's silent.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close to what I'm saying. How would you say that? How is it different from what I'm saying?
Because it's hard for me to imagine it beginning the syllable in
Oh.
the second word because it's still
Okay.
the last, like,
I see,
sound
because
of
you're saying the
syllable.
consonant's beginning the syllable,
Right,
not the, okay.
yeah.
All right,
Looking
sure.
at them both from top to bottom, it looks like it's closing it out in both words,
Right.
if that makes any sense. Because it's the last, like, notation.
I see what you're
Because
saying.
we're reading right and then down.
Especially considering a consonant or the syllable is only one consonant, right? So it's, in the first example, I think it's easier to see how it's closing it because there's a whole other consonant in front of it.
Yeah.
But since it's the beginning of the word, it really does kind of seem like it's actually ending on the vowel.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think it's because the saying it begins it in the sense of like vowel sounds. But so you're bringing in the consonant. You're saying, oh, but there's a consonant before. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, if it is, I mean, if you want to think about it that way, if it's used with the consonant at the beginning, it's vocal. If it's used with the consonant at the end, it's silent. You
Okay,
could
I
do
see what you're saying
you could
now.
do that.
So because it's the second vowel in the, or not really a vowel, but it's the second,
Here?
or no, in the top word,
Yeah,
you're saying it's closing it because it's one of two and it's at the end
right.
for bottom notations and then, okay, I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
this is, yeah, so I see, it depends on how you think about end, but I see what you're saying now. But I think because when I'm saying beginning, I'm meaning just in terms of the vowel sounds that you have down here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's right that the way you're thinking about it as well. Okay? All right, schwa. All right, let's review. The weak dagesh. Okay, the dagesh is a dot that you put in the middle of some letters. And we've learned so far a type of dagesh called the weak dagesh. Which letters can the weak dagesh go in? Okay, what's the mnemonic?
Bhagavad,
Close. You're almost there. Bagad kafat. Yeah, you were almost there. You were almost there. So that helps us remember the letters. Okay. Bagad
Does it actually mean something, or is it just?
kafat doesn't mean anything. It just means that you can remember which letters the weak dagesh goes in. It's just a mnemonic. It's just a memory device. Okay, does everybody know how this works? So it's as if you sound this out like it's a word, okay? Because I'm just putting vowel sounds between these. Bagad, kafat, okay? So these are the 6, right? This is on the quiz. The 6 that take the weak dagesh. And the function of the weak dagesh is pronunciation. It gives us 2 different pronunciations for each of these in ancient Hebrew. In modern Hebrew pronunciation, which we're using, it's only 3 of them, beit, kaf, and pei, that have 2 pronunciations. But it's the pronunciation dot, okay? And this dagesh can only go in these 6 letters. All right, now you're old enough that it's time for me to have the talk with you where I tell you that there is another type of dagesh.
Oh no!
Actually, there's more than one other type of dagesh. But for right now, you can't handle that. You can't handle the truth yet about that. But the second major type of dagesh, the other one is you won't have to learn for a long time. But is called, what do you think? If this one's called the weak doggish, what do you think? What's the other one called? The strong doggish, okay. The strong doggish, it can be used with any consonant except the gutturals, all right. But it can be used with almost any consonant. So that's already we know a distinction that weak doggish is only with these 6 letters. Strong doggish can be used with almost any other, including these. Can be used with these and almost any other, except for a few gutturals. So we have weak. Whoa. Doggish, and then we have strong doggish. Okay. Weak doggish is the pronunciation dot. Strong doggish is the doubling dot. Strong doggish is the doubling dot. It doubles or lengthens a consonant. And you probably say to yourself, huh? That's kind of weird. What do you mean lengthening a consonant? I thought you could lengthen vowels, but I didn't know you could lengthen a consonant. Well, yes, in Hebrew, you can lengthen consonants. I'll tell you what I mean by that. It's like you have 2 of the same consonant together, okay, and you make 2 sounds in the middle of the word. Okay, he gives a word, but meanness. Hear that? 2 N's. Meanness. Okay, so these are in English. These are actually 2 different letters. But imagine that this was the same letter that was the same consonant that was lengthened. N. And now I'm exaggerating it. You wouldn't actually make it that way, but so if we look at this example here, okay, what are these? The names of these and sounds? Name? Kof. Okay, it's not the coughing mouth; it's the kof. Kof makes a sound. What sound does this make? T. It's a tet. What's the name of this letter? Lamed. What sound does it make? Okay. So I've written this as a 3-letter root without any vowels. This root means to kill. And for some reason, I don't know if grammarians are bloodthirsty people or what, but somehow this became the paradigm verb for biblical Hebrew. And so when you practice your verbs, it's always, yeah. He, she, it kills. You kill. It really reinforces a negative stereotype about the Old Testament that it's all violence, right? So I don't know. If they would have asked me, I would have said shamar, because it means to keep, guard, and protect. And it's also a stable root that we could have used, but alas, katal it is katal. So normally it would be written like this, right? That's that standard vowel pattern for verbs that you'll find in the vocabulary list. Katal, to kill. But what if we did it like this? If we put it in this verb form, which we'll learn later, much later. So let's pronounce this. We have a chirik, makes an E sound. We have a, what's this? What vowel? What's the name of this vowel? Tsere. You were almost there. Tsere. Okay? And it makes an A sound. So we have ki, tail. Okay? But notice this. Something is going on here. There's a dot. Now, to figure this one out, it's pretty easy because is it a Begad Kafat letter? No, it's not a Begad Kafat letter. Therefore, it cannot be the weak Dagesh because the weak Dagesh only appears in the Begad Kafat letters. You see? So if you ever find a Dagesh outside of a Begad Kafat letter, it must be a strong Dagesh. It must be the doubling Dagesh. The tricky thing is that a Begad, you could have both in Begad Kafats.
How do you distinguish a strong, Dagesh in a weak, in one of the weak?
I'm glad you asked that because that's the next thing we're going to talk about. But before we get there, I want to just look at this. I want to look at this example to think about how the strong Dagesh functions, how it works. All right. So, but we're starting to close in on how you distinguish it, right? Because if it's not Begad Kafat, it must be a strong Dagesh. As in this case, Tet is not one of these letters. So this is a strong Dagesh. So instead of being a pronunciation indicator, it's a doubling or lengthening of this word indicator. So this is how this would be transliterated. Keep tail, like min nes, the two ends together. Keep tail. Okay, so I just transliterated this Hebrew into English here for you to see this. So it's actually doubling this tet. Keep tail. Tyler?
So then the tet is both the beginning and the end of a syllable.
Right, good way to think. So we could, in this syllable division here, a strong Dagesh actually, in a sense, splits or doubles that. So we have keep, there's a closed syllable, tail, there's a closed syllable. You see that?
Is that always
Keep-
gonna be the case?
Tail.
That it will end and begin a syllable?
If it's a strong Dagesh preceded by a short vowel, it will be the case, like in this case. So, yeah, we'll come to that in just a second. Ways of telling them apart. But if it's preceded by a vowel, that is an indicator that it's a strong Dagesh. Okay? Do you see how this works? It's pronounced, instead of pronouncing, let's practice this. Instead of pronouncing it keep tail, hear that? It's pronounced keep tail. But we don't want to overdo that. Keep tail, like that, okay? So listen again. Not keep tail, but keep tail. You hear it twice, okay? So to get it right, that's how we would do it. So repeat after me. Keep tail.
Keep tail.
We're trying to do it the right way. Keep tail.
Keep tail.
Okay? Do you want to do it the wrong way? Keep tail.
Keep tail.
Keep tail. Now say it the right way. Keep tail. Keep tail. Okay? All right, we'll keep working on that. But that's how the strong Dagesh works. It's a different function, you see, from the weak Dagesh, which is giving us different pronunciations of the consonant. This is giving us a lengthening or a doubling of that consonant. Okay, so let's think a little bit more about how we distinguish between these. And let's just follow down what he has on page 15 here. Look on page 15. He has a discussion in the textbook about this. 3.8. Is everybody with me where we are on page 15? 3.8. Telling the difference between weak and strong Dagesh. So he says, some of these things we've already talked about, but he's giving us a orderly presentation here. If a Dagesh is in a consonant other than a Begad Kafat, it is a strong Dagesh. See, just like I told you. So you can trust me, I'm telling you the truth. So that's his number one rule. First of all, you can eliminate a set of options if you just remember the Begad Kafat rule. Because weak Dagesh can only go in Begad Kafat letters. So if it's not a Begad Kafat letter, you know for sure it's a strong Dagesh. If it is a Begad Kafat letter, you still have to think about it because it could be either one. Follow that? Okay. If a Dagesh is in a Begad Kafat, it may be weak or strong, as I just said. So how do you distinguish that? If the sound before the Begad Kafat is a consonant, the Dagesh is weak. So his example is midbar. Midbar. So the Dagesh is in the bait. Okay? So it's a Begad Kafat, so we're still trying to figure out, is it weak or strong? But preceding this is not a vowel sound, but a consonant sound, the D of mid. Do you see that? The immediate sound before it is the consonant sound, D. There's no vowel sound. And so, in this case, it is a weak Dagesh. Okay, alternatively, you could say it that if it's preceded by a vowel, especially a short vowel, then it is a doubling Dagesh. Okay, a doubling Dagesh has to be preceded by a vowel, like it is in this case. And if it's beginning a syllable rather than ending one, then it's going to have to be a weak Dagesh, the pronunciation Dagesh. If the sound before the Begad Kafat is a vowel, the Dagesh is strong, like I just said. Okay? So, first of all, look to see, is it in a Begad Kafat letter? If it's not, it has to be a strong Dagesh. If it is, then we have to see, is it preceded by a vowel? If it is, then it is a strong or doubling Dagesh. If it's not preceded by a vowel, then it is a the weak Dagesh, Begad Kafat. So, and actually, it's easier to kind of start to look at examples and see the patterns that they follow, okay? Because it's quite abstract to put it that way, but it's clearer. So look at the first example, mishpat. I'm not going to take the time to write it on the board right now. Mishpat, okay? Where's the Dagesh? What letter is the Dagesh in? What? It looks like a cough, but it's not a cough. In mishpat, the first example.
Oh, okay.
It's in a pay. It looks like a cough. You're right, it looks like a cough, but it's a pay. It's in a pay. Is it a Begad Kafat letter?
Yes.
It is. So we don't know yet. Okay. Is it preceded by a vowel? No. So it's a weak Dagesh. It's preceded by a shva, which is silent, but it doesn't.
How would that translate
It doesn't
into
really-
the pronunciation?
Well, it's not mishpat.
Right.
It's mishpat. Did you say how did it translate into pronunciation?
Right.
Yeah. So it's being used. The Dagesh is being used here to tell us this is the hard sound of pay, not the soft sound. Okay. So let's look at the next example. Yudaber. Okay. So in the previous example, we had a silent shva, right? It was silent. Now we have a vocal shva because it's at the beginning of the word. Yudaber. All right. What consonant letter is the Dagesh in?
Yes.
Bait. Is it a Begad Kafat?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, we don't know yet then. We have to look to see if it has a vowel before it or not. Does it have a vowel before it?
Yeah.
Yes, then it is the strong Dagesh.
So it affects it both ways? Because it's
it still takes the both sounds, but it just doubles.
It affects it both ways.
Yeah, okay.
If a begad kafat letter has a strong dagesh, it's still given the hard pronunciation, but the main function is doubling. So good observation. You're right. It would be, I guess that you can't really indicate the doubling of the soft sound. It doesn't occur. It just doesn't occur. So it's always, it has both functions, but it's still a strong dagesh. So the hard sound is sort of, not in a linguistically accurate sense, but in a heuristic sense, in a learning way, it has kind of the secondary effect of making it hard. So, but that's a good thing for us to see. Okay? So that's a strong dagesh. So you would pronounce it yedab ber. Yedab ber. I'm exaggerating it. So you hear the two b. Yedab ber. Yedab ber. Yedab ber. Yedab ber. Not yedaber. Yedaber. I didn't do my race very well either. Yedaber.
Would that also split the syllable into two?
Splits the syllable. Yeah, so you have dab and bear. Dab and bear. Okay, let's look at the next one. Malkenu is how you pronounce that. Malkenu means our king. All right, so which letter has a dagesh in it? Kaf has a dagesh in it. Is it begad kafat? It is, so we don't know yet. Now we have to look to see if it's preceded by a vowel or a consonant, or a vowel or lack of vowel. Is it preceded by a vowel?
No.
Then what do we know? It's weak. It's up just for pronunciation. Malkenu. Okay, it's not doubled. So basically, you could draw yourself a simple little flow chart. Have you seen flow charts where it's either or? So you just say first. It's really two switches that work in your flow chart, right? There's begad kafat letter or not, preceded by a vowel or not, and you can arrive at the correct answer by using those. Ian?
So there we have to know that the shva is silent.
Right.
That's why the consonant is what precedes it, which is what makes it weak. Is there a case into which the shva
Right.
is
Well,
going to be pronounced or
Shva,
Because it's not a vowel, right? So
right, it's not a vowel. Yeah, so you're starting to see, you're seeing how the other things we're learning go with the rules of the dagesh to help us, right? To see where the syllables are, and that we need to know that in order to make these kinds of decisions that will help us. But really, technically, the shva is saying there's no vowel sound. Even though that's why it's tricky, because sometimes we pronounce it as a vowel-like sound. It's really no vowel. So if you see, let's see. Yeah, if you see it before a dagesh, it's going to be not counted as a vowel.
Okay. Whether or not it's vocalized. Or
Yeah.
it just means no vowel.
It means no vowel. That's what it means. But then, as it's actualized, as it's vocalized, we sometimes give it a sound.
Okay.
You just need to pronounce the consonant, right?
What's that? Okay. Yeah, if it's a silent shva, we just pronounce the consonant, and not. So, I don't remember if I talked about the group of letters called gutturals. I know I talked about gutturals and guttural sounds, but okay, let's move back a little bit back to the alphabet lecture. Okay, we learned the alphabet with all the standard consonants in it. And then we started to break it down into different subgroups of letters to see different characteristics of these different letters. So they're all consonants, but they have different groups. Okay, One group we learned was the Bigad Kafat letters. They're the letters that take the weak Dagesh. Another group of letters that we learned were the letters that have a final form, right? The mnemonic I use for that is, come on, putz. Putz is like a clumsy person, but it's Kaf, Mem, Nun, Pei, Sade. Those are the letters that have final forms. The majority have the long tail, except for the final Mem is the square one. Another group of letters that we need to become familiar with are the guttural letters. And I don't think we didn't talk about them as a group. The guttural letters are Aleph, Hey, Chet, Ayin, and sometimes Reish. Aleph, Hey, Chet, Ayin, and sometimes Reish. So I like to think about the gutturals as they're a group of kids and they all live in the same neighborhood. And they have a little gang, the guttural gang. And there's Reish is maybe the new kid in town and maybe lives kind of on the outskirts of this neighborhood. And so Reish is always tagging along. Hey, can I be like you guys? Can I be in your group? And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't for Reish, who's a guttural wannabe. And remember, all of these are made in the back part of your throat, the soft part of your throat in the back. It's a little confusing because in this pronunciation system we're using Aleph and Ayin are silent, but they would have been some sort of guttural sound in that same area. It's really most helpful to think about the chet, where the het make that sound. Feel where it is back there. Chet. Now try to make the R sound back there too. Feel how it's pretty similar. It's back in the same area. So you see why that the Reish then would be like gutturals, would be similar in some ways to gutturals because it's being made in the same area of the mouth. So what we're going to see as we move along are certain characteristics of the gutturals. They're a group and they have features in common. One, we're just seeing where they're pronounced and how they sound in that area of the throat. But in the textbook, he's introducing us to one of their characteristics. That is that they never take a dagesh. Or we might say very rarely, because very few things are absolute. But they don't take, for all normal purposes, they don't take a dagesh.
The gutturals don't?
The gutturals don't. Either weak or strong. They don't take a dagesh. Right? Because we know they're not in the Bigad Kafat group, right? No gutturals in there, so they're not going to ever take a weak dagesh, but they don't take a strong dagesh either. And it's something to do with how those sounds are made that you don't do that. You don't double them. Okay?
Just out of
Mark?
curiosity, is the dagesh, is this part of the pronunciation guide added by the Masoretes, or is it
It is.
in ancient Hebrew as well?
It is. So what they're saying they're saying, we didn't invent this sound, but they're saying we hear in these cases the lengthening of the consonant. So they're hearing meanness like that. They're hearing the two N's in meanness or the two T's in keep tail. And they came up with this dot to indicate to people who came after it, to us, that that's how they heard it. Keep tail.
Did the Masoretes invent the strong dagesh?
Yes. Yeah, all these dots.
They're all Masoretes.
Yeah, all the dots are from and they're actually, to make things a little more complicated, there were different groups of Masoretes and they had slightly different systems, of course, as things go, but we don't need to worry ourselves with that. They came up with these small dots and dashes. They invented that system to represent something that they already existed, which was how the Hebrew is pronounced. And so they heard, in the case of Bigad Kafat, they heard sometimes these consonants have two different sounds, we make them with two different sounds because we've learned how to pronounce in this tradition. And sometimes we hear consonants with a doubling or lengthening sound to them, and sometimes we don't. So we have to have a way to indicate when they do have it and when they don't. And they use these two different types of Dagesh to tell us that information about how to pronounce the Hebrew. Oh, good. We have 10 minutes because I have something to share with you about mnemonics. Well, didn't I tell you to remind me about mnemonic devices? I should have if I didn't. I reminded myself, so it's okay. We're starting to learn Hebrew vocabulary, and that's why we need to get our consonants and our vowels down and learn how to put syllables together to pronounce these words right away, because the pronunciation of the word is what you attach the meaning value to, right? So if you can't recognize that word consistently, you can't start to learn the meanings for these things. So we're working hard to get this down as a foundation. And I've already shared with you some of my devices that I use, and I hope you'll come up with your own. Because in Hebrew, remember, we have a challenge that the Hebrew vocabulary is not cognate to English. And so we're starting from scratch. We're starting from zero in most cases to learn the meanings of these words. And so the way we need to do it is, the way our brains work is, we attach knowledge to something we already know. Okay? Because if you hear something and it has no relationship to anything else you know, it's very hard for it to be stored in your mind. And so what we need to do in learning vocabulary is to create connections. All right? Now, our minds normally just do this. It's easy. We make, it's like this other thing I heard. We start to connect immediately and we create connections. But in this case, we need a little extra help because of the lack of relationship to languages we know. So this is where mnemonics come into play. So let me give you an example of a mnemonic that I have used. Okay? Let's sound this out. What letter is this? Ayin, very good. What vowel? Comments, very good. What letter? Seen. What vowel? Good. What consonant? Hey, okay. Hey. So silent, and then on the end. So this is, and the accent's on the last syllable, excuse me. So this is pronounced asa. Repeat after me, asa.
Asa.
Asa is a verb, and it means to do or make. So I have, on the one hand, these signs here and the sounds they make. I've learned that. And I have this semantic content, the meaning, to do, make. And I have to connect them in my mind so that I can learn that this meaning conveyed to me in this English over here relates to this Hebrew word. Say. So this is what I call building bridges. All right? So I want to build some kind of bridge to something I know or can remember from the Hebrew to the English. That's the direction I'm traveling. The direction of travel is like this, across this bridge. How am I going to cross from over here to over here? Can anybody think of anything? Have I done this for you yet? No, I haven't. Okay, good.
It kind of sounds like a saw. Like, what do you use to make something? You can use a
Wow,
saw.
you sharp. That's great. That was really good. It sounds like a saw. What people use to do or make something. Okay, that's actually what I often use. Look at this saw. So I use a saw to do or make something. You see that? So this set of sounds here. Now I've connected it, and it's arbitrary. It's just I'm just coming up with this. It could be absurd, but as long as it connects to the actual meaning that I want to learn with this, that's helpful to me. Okay, so I think I use a saw to do and make. All right? Now you're going to think, I'm going to fill my brain with all these absurdities, and it's going to be, you know, it's just silly, and it's going to be a burden. But over time, what happens is what I call burning your bridges. Because after it's connected in your mind enough, you don't have to think about saws anymore. I don't think about saws, except in this example, because I like to use this one with students to give an example. But most of the mnemonics I've learned in my life, I've now forgotten. But I now know the meanings of the Hebrew words. Because once your mind has it, it gets rid of superfluous things you don't use or don't need anymore. Because now my mind goes from the Hebrew to the English really quickly. And so I've burned my bridge. And now I just know the meaning of that. And that is how it can work. You use a mnemonic to learn words. Ian?
Would you say that flashcards, it's helpful to like transliterate that, to write out A, S, A, H, like underneath it? Or,
So,
or is that kind of cheating in a way?
So there are two things here. One is learning how to pronounce the word. If I were you, I wouldn't maybe put it on the front of a vocab card. Maybe I put it on the back. Because the problem is you gotta test yourself. You're testing yourself over and over again to see, do I really know this? So it shouldn't be just up to me to test you or to Mr. Moeller to test you. You're testing yourself, so you have a pretty good sense of what you know and what you don't know. That's how you're learning, you're monitoring. Am I getting it? Am I getting it? And if not, I need to work or ask questions. So the thing I worry about is always writing the pronunciation in the transliteration here is that you aren't getting it. But you can put it on the back, so you test yourself. You know, and I'd say, oh, asa, that's okay, you got it. But also on the back, I would say like this. I might write out a saw. Or I might write out the sentence. I use a saw to do and make. On the back of my card. So that it's not just doing it for me. Like I actually have to know that. But then if I don't know it, when I look on the back, I say, oh yeah, I have that mnemonic. Then the next time, I remember the mnemonic, and I get the meaning, and I check myself, and I got it right. So I know I'm getting it. Does it make sense? Gregory?
This may be jumping too far ahead, but this is kind of on my mind thinking of languages. If you see a word like that, which ends in the hey, can you think that might be an infinitive of a verb? Is that a typical infinitive ending for a verb?
No. It's not. It is. There's a group of verbs that end in hey, but it's not an infinitive necessarily. Yeah, we'll learn the infinitive. It has a particular form that we'll learn, but yeah. What you're seeing here is I told you there's a comets tata pattern probably. This one has a comets, but that's because it's a final hey verb, so this hey is affecting this vowel, but yeah, it's not. It doesn't tell us what type of a verb it is necessarily. That it has a hey. It's the hey is the stem or the root. The hey is part of the root rather than the verb pattern.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, because we're going to learn later there are suffixes that are added on and prefixes to verbs to form them into their verbal forms. But right now that's just a root, a 3-letter root.
Gotcha.
Okay.
For our quiz, is
Yeah.
it going to be vowels and syllables and our vocab from both chapters, or?
Yeah, it is over. Yeah, everything we've covered since the last quiz. The main thing are vowels.
Okay.
But there will be some of the. There can be some vocab on there. But I want to focus on vowels, okay?
Well, we should memorize the vocab for the quiz as well.
Yeah, if you can. I would say first priority is the vowels, learning the vowels. That's going to be the main thing that's tested on the next quiz. And then, yes, I can take it if you have it. I think that Yeah, that's the best. If you just put it up here on the table.
I did not staple mine, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
One more question if I
Sure,
may.
you may.
For this one, since you were saying the difference between it being silent and vocal was whether it was started